In the heart of New York's prestigious banking world, a dramatic contrast unfolds. The bank's lobby, usually a haven of opulence and power, is shaken by the unexpected entrance of a disheveled man, desperately seeking a bit of compassion. His humble plea for a small amount of change is met with cruelty from security guards and cold indifference from the wealthy patrons. However, amid this scene of harshness, Evelyn Stone, a prominent figure of New York's elite, witnesses a moment that stops her heart. The man's worn wrist bears a watch she had given her grandson Michael, years ago, a reminder of her lost family. As Evelyn's emotions surge from initial shock to hopeful determination, she intervenes, demanding the man be treated with dignity and seeking answers about the watch's origin. Her discovery propels her into a new quest, one filled with unresolved pain and the promise of uncovering the truth about her grandson's fate. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Before we dive into this story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. In the opulent lobby of the esteemed New York Bank, a palpable aura of grandeur and affluence seemed to permeate every corner. This was a realm where power and wealth converged in a dazzling display of luxury. Business magnates and high society elites navigated the space with effortless grace, their movements synchronized in a ballet of multi-million-dollar transactions and whispered negotiations. The marble floors, meticulously polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflected the soft, golden glow of the elegant lighting, casting a halo of sophistication over everything. Every element of the environment spoke of an unassailable exclusivity, where even the slightest disruption was inconceivable, and perfection was the unspoken norm. Yet, on that fateful afternoon, the sanctity of this grand edifice was ruthlessly shattered. Through the revolving glass doors, a figure emerged, a man whose presence was a jarring anomaly against the backdrop of opulence. His entrance was marked by a profound sense of disorientation, as though he was unsure whether he belonged in this realm of affluence. His clothes, once perhaps a shade of dignity, now hung in tatters, stained and dirtied from a life lived on the margins. The fabric clung to his frail frame with a kind of tragic surrender, offering no warmth or protection. His shoes were nothing more than mere remnants, barely holding together, their worn-out soles a testament to countless miles walked in search of solace. His hair, unkempt and matted, framed a face that bore the deep lines of suffering and time's relentless passage. His eyes, darkened by a mixture of profound shame and desperation, told a silent story of survival and longing for dignity. As he shuffled toward the teller, his head hung low in a posture of utter defeat. His hands trembled with a kind of raw vulnerability. When he finally lifted his gaze, the sheer fragility of his voice emerged as a barely audible whisper, each word imbued with an aching plea. "Please, just a little help. I need some food change," he implored, his eyes darting to the floor, as though the very act of meeting their gaze would be an unbearable assault on his already fragile dignity. Before the teller could offer any response, two security guards appeared with an unsettling swiftness, their presence as commanding as it was foreboding. Dressed in immaculate black suits, they radiated an almost oppressive authority, their very existence a stark reminder of the power dynamics at play. They exuded an air of untouchable dominance, their every movement a reminder that in this domain of privilege, their authority was absolute. "Get out of here now," one of the guards barked, his voice a sharp, penetrating sound that cut through the lobby's serene ambience. His grip on the man's arm was merciless, a tangible display of disdain and contempt. The man, caught in a whirlwind of fear and confusion, tried to retreat, his mumbled protest barely intelligible, but his pleas were met with unyielding hostility. "What do you think you're doing here?" the other guard growled, his voice laced with an almost palpable contempt as he shoved the man toward the exit with a forceful shove. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. The desperation etched onto the man's face was almost unbearable to witness, a silent cry for help that seemed to only fuel the guards' cruelty. They dragged him out with an efficiency that bordered on brutality, their movements devoid of any trace of compassion or empathy. The man's cries of humiliation and anguish pierced the air, each sound a stark reminder of his suffering. Yet the bank's patrons remained chillingly indifferent, their cold eyes watching the scene with a detached curiosity. Some looked on with barely concealed disgust, while others exhibited a near-cruel indifference. To them, the man was nothing more than a fleeting inconvenience, a temporary blemish on the otherwise immaculate tapestry of their privileged existence. In this temple of wealth and power, there was no room for the misery of the impoverished, and the man's plight was dismissed with an appalling ease. Sitting regally on one of the plush leather sofas near the entrance, Evelyn Stone observed the entire scene unfold with an inscrutable silence. Even in her advanced years, she exuded an aura of formidable authority, her upright posture and penetrating gaze reflecting decades of experience and influence. Her silver hair, meticulously styled, cascaded in soft waves, framing a face that bore the marks of both wisdom and resolve. Her hands, adorned with a collection of exquisite rings set with precious stones, rested elegantly in her lap. To many, Evelyn was the epitome of New York's elite, wealthy, influential, and to those less acquainted with her, perhaps detached from the harsher realities of life. Yet, as she watched the brutality inflicted upon the man before her, a deep, unsettling shift began to stir within her. It wasn't merely the injustice of the situation that unsettled her, but rather a gnawing, uncomfortable familiarity, a sharp pang of pain that began to resurface. The chaos of the scene seemed to blur into the background as Evelyn's attention was drawn to a seemingly insignificant detail: the man's wrist, bound with a watch of unmistakable age. The watch, with its worn leather strap and faded patina, was more than just a timepiece. It was a relic of the past that Evelyn recognized with a jolt of recognition. Her heart raced as the world around her seemed to momentarily halt. The sounds of footsteps, the murmur of voices all faded into a distant haze as her mind was yanked back in time. This watch she knew intimately well. It had once graced the wrist of someone she loved deeply, a grandson who had vanished years ago without a trace. The pain of his disappearance had been a constant companion, a wound that never quite healed. The watch, a tangible link to the void he left behind, had become a symbol of that loss. As Evelyn's gaze fixed on the time-worn accessory, a lump formed in her throat, and a fierce, unrelenting determination surged within her. This could not be mere coincidence. There was something profound and compelling about this moment that she needed to unravel. With a grace that belied the urgency of her actions, Evelyn rose from her seat. Her movements, always characterized by an air of measured elegance, now carried an urgent resolve. She approached the guards, who still held the man, his pallor pale, his breath shallow from fear and humiliation. "Let him go," Evelyn commanded, her voice slicing through the air with an authority that only decades of power and respect could bestow. The guards, momentarily taken aback, exchanged confused glances but reluctantly released the man, who crumpled to the floor in a heap of exhaustion and relief. Evelyn knelt beside him, her gaze unwaveringly fixed on the watch. "Where did you get that?" she inquired, her voice now softened but imbued with an intensity that brooked no argument. The man looked up at her, his confusion palpable as he struggled to process the abrupt turn of events. "A young man gave it to me," he murmured, his voice trembling. "He said I needed it more than he did." Evelyn felt a shiver course through her, a chill that seemed to emanate from the core of her being. The man's words were cryptic, yet the sincerity in his tone and the depth of his eyes suggested that she was on the precipice of uncovering something significant. In that moment, amidst the surrounding chaos and the cold indifference of the crowd, Evelyn realized that a new, unexpected journey was about to commence, one that would unearth buried secrets and finally reveal the truth about her grandson. But she also understood that this truth might be more harrowing than she could ever imagine, a revelation fraught with obstacles and dark revelations that would forever alter the course of her life. Evelyn Stone's existence had always been defined by moments of intense social brilliance. Hailing from an influential family and accustomed to living under the relentless gaze of public scrutiny, Evelyn had mastered the art of maintaining appearances. Her early marriage to Harold Stone, a renowned businessman, had led to the creation of a vast empire that extended its reach beyond business into the very heart of New York society. Despite being enveloped in luxury and power, Evelyn found her true happiness in the small, intimate moments of family life. Her greatest treasure was her grandson, Michael. From an early age, Michael had displayed an insatiable curiosity and a brilliant intelligence that captivated everyone in his orbit. He was not merely a promising young man, but a beacon of light in Evelyn's life, illuminating her world in ways she had never experienced with her daughter, Julia. Julia had always been a distant, cold figure, more concerned with upholding the family's flawless image than forming genuine connections with her mother or her son. Michael, on the other hand, had inherited his grandfather's resolute determination and Evelyn's compassionate heart, making him her cherished confidant. Early on, Evelyn observed that Michael struggled with the expectations thrust upon him. Unlike his father and grandfather, who were entrenched in the world of business, Michael's passions lay in music, art, and social causes, interests that were met with disdain by his family. To Evelyn, however, these divergent passions only served to make Michael all the more special. She cherished his uniqueness, unwaveringly supporting his creative pursuits and giving him the freedom to explore the world on his terms. As Michael matured, the tensions within the Stone family began to intensify. David, Michael's father and Julia's ex-husband, became increasingly entangled in murky business dealings. His questionable investments and dubious connections were an open secret, and while Evelyn harbored no illusions about David's integrity, she feared that confronting him directly could shatter the fragile remnants of family unity. The discord between David and Julia became a constant, disruptive force, and despite Evelyn's earnest attempts to mediate, she felt increasingly powerless. Michael, sensitive to the familial strife, began to withdraw, spending more time away from home and seeking solace in places his parents would never approve of. He found refuge in unexpected venues, live music bars, eclectic art studios, and activist circles devoted to causes the Stone family deemed frivolous. It was in these unconventional spaces that Michael encountered individuals who would profoundly impact his life. In a hidden bar nestled in the East Village, Michael discovered a community of young people living on the fringes of society. Driven by a fierce desire for change and a profound dissatisfaction with conventional norms, their passion and alternative perspective on life captivated him, offering a stark contrast to the hollow rituals of his family's world. It was here, amid the raw energy of their ideals, that Michael began to find a sense of belonging. But it was also where he began to lose himself. By the age of 19, he had become completely estranged from the life his family had envisioned for him. The gala parties, formal dinners, and endless discussions about investments felt increasingly empty and meaningless compared to the new, vibrant realities he had embraced. Evelyn remained the one person Michael still confided in, though even with her, he had started to withhold parts of his life. One night, following a particularly violent clash between his parents, Michael made a decision that would irrevocably alter his future. He went to Evelyn's apartment, finding her in her favorite chair, engrossed in a book of poetry, a pastime they had once shared when he was a child. He observed her in quiet contemplation before stepping into the room. "Grandma," he began, his voice laden with an emotional weight he could barely contain, "I can't live like this anymore. I need to leave. I need to find my way." Evelyn looked up from her book, her heart sinking at the gravity of his words. She sensed that something was deeply wrong, but hearing it from Michael struck a blow she wasn't prepared to endure. "Michael, my dear, what do you mean, leave? Where will you go?" she asked, her voice trembling with concern. Michael approached her, kneeling beside her chair, and took her hands in his. "I'm not entirely sure where I'm headed, but I know I can't stay here. I feel suffocated, like I'm living a life that isn't mine, and it's slowly destroying me." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes as she struggled to process his anguish. She had always known Michael was different, but she had never realized the depth of his unhappiness. "Michael, we can find a solution. I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens. Please, don't make any rash decisions." But Michael's mind was already made up. He kissed his grandmother's hand, offering her a sad, resigned smile. "I already have." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. "Grandma, I just wanted you to know that I love you more than anything, and I'll never forget you. But I have to go now." Before Evelyn could offer any more words of comfort, he stood up and walked out the door. She sat there, rooted to her seat, paralyzed by an overwhelming sense of impending calamity, unable to prevent the course of events that was now set in motion. That night, Michael left his grandmother's house with a heavy heart and never returned. In a final gesture of defiance against the life he was leaving behind, he left a note for his parents, explaining that he could no longer endure the suffocating expectations and pressures of his old life. He needed to find his peace, far from the shadows of his family's ambitions, and so he vanished. The days that followed were an unending torment for Evelyn. The uncertainty of Michael's whereabouts gnawed at her, consuming her every waking moment. She spared no expense or effort in her search, employing private detectives and leveraging her influence to apply pressure on the police. Yet, despite her best efforts, Michael seemed to have evaporated into thin air. The agony of not knowing where he was or if he was safe was excruciating, but Evelyn clung to a fragile thread of hope that one day she would find her beloved grandson. Meanwhile, Michael's reality had become a labyrinth of despair. With no money and no place to call his own, he drifted through the streets of New York, trying to stay out of sight. The fear of being discovered and forcibly returned to the life he had so desperately fled kept him hidden. He began to merge with the city's invisible population, the marginalized and forgotten, and encountered a side of New York that was starkly different from the one he had known. One frigid winter night, as he roamed a dilapidated neighborhood, Michael stumbled upon a small church where volunteers were serving food to the homeless. Starving, exhausted, and utterly defeated, he accepted a meager meal with a mix of relief and desperation. As he ate, his gaze fell upon a man seated in a dimly lit corner, his expression one of profound desolation. Something about the man's forlorn demeanor resonated deeply with Michael, compelling him to approach despite his precarious state. "Do you need anything?" Michael asked, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth in the harsh environment of the church. The man looked up with a mixture of skepticism and gratitude, his eyes reflecting a life of hardship. "Just a chance to move on," he replied softly, barely meeting Michael's gaze. The words struck a chord within Michael, stirring a deep empathy. On an impulse, he removed the watch from his wrist, the only tangible connection he had to his past. A gift from his grandmother Evelyn on his 18th birthday. "Take it," Michael offered, holding out the watch. "It's all I have, but it might be more useful to you." The man hesitated, astonished by the generosity of someone in his dire circumstances. After a moment, he accepted the watch with trembling hands, murmuring a heartfelt "thank you" before slipping away into the cold night. As Michael watched the man disappear, he felt a profound sense of liberation. Leaving the watch behind felt like a symbolic severance from his old life, the expectations he had never been able to meet, the guilt that had shadowed him. That night, amid the biting winter chill, Michael resolved never to return. He would forge a new identity, somewhere no one knew him, where he could finally break free and discover who he truly was, unburdened by the weight of the past. Years had passed, and Evelyn Stone's search for her missing grandson became a relentless, solitary quest. Every dead end and false lead chipped away at her resolve, but she never relinquished hope. The watch she had given Michael, engraved with the heartfelt dedication, with love. Grandma was her talisman, a symbol of an unbroken bond and an enduring love that refused to die. Despite the agony of not knowing his fate, the watch remained a tangible connection to the love she had for him. One day, as Evelyn went about her rare excursion in the city, handling mundane affairs at a New York bank, something extraordinary occurred. She was accustomed to navigating the world of finance with her characteristic grace and authority, but today was different. A man, starkly out of place in the opulent surroundings, entered the lobby. His clothes were tattered and filthy, his demeanor marked by a deep desperation that clashed violently with the bank's air of affluence and control. Evelyn watched with mounting distress as the man approached the tellers, only to be met with harsh rebukes and rough treatment from two imposing security guards. The brutality with which they handled him, shoving, dragging, as though his very presence was a blight upon their orderly world, ignited a fierce indignation within her. Evelyn's heart ached with empathy as she witnessed the man's plight. But her emotions took a sharp turn when he raised his arm defensively. There on his wrist was the watch, the same watch she had given Michael. Time seemed to freeze for Evelyn. The sounds of the bustling lobby, the clatter of heels on marble, the murmur of conversations all faded into insignificance as she fixated on that familiar piece. Her heart pounded with a tumultuous mix of hope, fear, and the old pain that had never truly faded. Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn moved swiftly. She approached the guards with a commanding presence, her voice cutting through the din with unwavering authority. "Let him go," she demanded. The guards, taken aback by her forceful intervention, hesitated but eventually complied, allowing the man to collapse onto the cold floor. Evelyn knelt beside him, her gaze locked on the watch, and with a voice laced with urgency and compassion, she asked, "Where did you get this?" The man, his confusion and fear palpable, mumbled about receiving the watch from a young man years prior, a young man who had seemed as lost and desperate as he was. Evelyn's heart raced. The connection was unmistakable. She was on the brink of an important lead, perhaps the key to unraveling the mystery that had plagued her life for so long. At that moment, amidst the cold indifference of the bank's patrons, Evelyn realized that her search was not over. It was only just beginning. Her resolve hardened as she prepared to follow this new lead, knowing that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but driven by the hope of finally uncovering the truth and finding her beloved grandson. With her heart brimming with renewed hope yet burdened by a torrent of uncertainties, Evelyn Stone resolved to uncover the truth about Michael's fate. no matter what it took. As she helped the man from the cold floor of the bank, she felt the weight of her mission settles upon her. The watch, Michael's watch, the only tangible link she had unearthed in years, was a beacon of hope and a source of trepidation. Memories of Michael's laughter, his expressive eyes, and the haunting sorrow he carried the last time she saw him flooded her mind, compelling her to act with urgency. "You're safe now," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Let's get out of here. We need to find a place where we can talk." The man looked at her with a mix of weariness and suspicion, his eyes reflecting the harsh realities of street life. His mistrust was palpable, born of a world that had given him little reason to believe in kindness. Nevertheless, Evelyn's resolute tone and unwavering gaze seemed to offer a glimmer of assurance. Reluctantly, he followed her out of the bank, past the inquisitive and judgmental stares of passers-by. As they walked, Evelyn couldn't help but notice how frail he appeared. Every step he took seemed a monumental effort, as though his entire being was on the brink of collapsing under the cumulative weight of years of hardship. With a mix of compassion and urgency, Evelyn guided him to her sleek black sedan, which seemed starkly out of place amidst the bustling crowd. She assisted him into the back seat with gentle care, then took her place behind the wheel, her mind fixed on the task at hand. Her drive through New York was marked by an almost obsessive concentration. The blaring traffic and neon lights of the city blurred into insignificance as her thoughts were consumed by Michael and the potential revelations this man might hold. After what felt like an eternity, Evelyn decided to take him to a discreet hotel on the city's outskirts, far from the prying eyes and distractions of the city center. Upon their arrival at the hotel, Evelyn guided the man into the lobby. The young receptionist's curious gaze followed them, but Evelyn's commanding presence ensured they were quickly assigned a room on the top floor. She chose a comfortable suite, understanding the importance of creating a safe and restful environment for her weary companion. Once inside the room, Evelyn helped the man to a chair by the window. He appeared utterly spent, his face etched with deep lines and scars that spoke of a lifetime of suffering. His eyes were hollow, reflecting the harshness of his experiences. Evelyn took a seat on the edge of the bed, her demeanor as gentle as she could manage despite her inner turmoil. "What's your name?" Evelyn asked softly, her voice imbued with genuine curiosity and compassion. She knew that gaining his trust was crucial if she was to learn anything of significance about Michael. The man looked up at her, the faintest flicker of hope mingled with his skepticism. He hesitated before responding, as though weighing the decision to open up to someone who had shown him unexpected kindness. His response would be the first step in unraveling the tangled web of Michael's disappearance, and Evelyn's resolve to uncover the truth only grew stronger with each passing moment. John looked at Evelyn for a long, searching moment, weighing the sincerity in her eyes against the mistrust that had become his constant companion. "John," he finally replied, his voice raw and tinged with weariness. "John is my name. And I'm Evelyn. I need your help. The watch you're wearing, it belonged to my grandson, Michael. He vanished years ago, and I'm desperate to find him. You said a young man gave you this watch. Can you tell me more about him? Who was he? Where did you meet him?" John's gaze fell to the watch on his wrist, his expression shifting through confusion, sadness, and perhaps a flicker of regret. "I remember him," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. "He was a young man, lost and aimless, like he didn't know where to turn. I came across him on a frigid night when I was out on the streets. He seemed as lost as I was." Evelyn's breath hitched, her heart tightening with each word. "What did he say to you? How did he seem?" "He was deeply sad, Mom, but he had a kindness about him. He gave me the watch and said I needed it more than he did. He said it was the only thing of value he had left, but it didn't mean anything to him anymore. After that, he just vanished into the night." A solitary tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek. The thought of Michael wandering through the cold, abandoned, and desolate was nearly unbearable. She quickly wiped it away, determined to stay strong for Michael's sake. "John, do you have any idea where he might have gone? Did anyone else see him? Did he mention where he was heading?" John shook his head slowly, his eyes reflecting the depth of his uncertainty. "No, ma'am, I don't know where he went, but I heard about a place where people like him, those who are trying to escape, sometimes go. It's a shelter, but it's different from others. It's more discreet, almost like a refuge for those who want to disappear." Evelyn's heart leaped at this new lead, hope flickering in her chest. "Do you know where it is?" she asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. John hesitated, casting a wary glance at Evelyn. "It's not easy to find. They don't welcome outsiders, but I can try to take you there. I know how to reach it, though it's not a straightforward path. Evelyn nodded, her resolve strengthening. Please, John, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If there's even a chance that Michael is there, I need to follow it. John met her gaze, a glimmer of sympathy and resolve in his eyes. All right, Mom, I'll take you. But be prepared, it won't be easy. This place is hidden, and getting in won't be simple. Evelyn took a deep breath, steeling herself for the journey ahead. She knew that this could be her best chance to find Michael, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay in wait. As she prepared to follow John, a new sense of purpose and determination filled her, driving her to uncover the truth and bring her grandson back from the shadows of his past. Evelyn took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. I'll help you, John. We'll get you to a safe place, but I need you to help me find this shelter. If there's any chance Michael is there, we need to find him. She quickly called her assistant, instructing her to arrange clean clothes, food, and medical care for John. As they waited, Evelyn ordered room service and watched as John ate with an intensity that spoke volumes about his recent hardships. Each bite seemed to restore a fragment of his strength, and Evelyn felt a deep sense of relief as she observed his gradual recovery. Later that night, after John had taken a bath and dressed in fresh clothes, he lay down on the hotel bed and fell asleep almost immediately. Evelyn remained awake, seated in the chair where John had been, gazing out at the city lights. The exhaustion that had become a constant companion mingled with the determination that drove her forward. The weight of the past years seemed to press heavily on her shoulders, but she knew that this new lead was her best chance yet to find Michael. The next morning, John woke up with a bit more color on his face and a glimmer of confidence that had been missing before. Evelyn could see the change in him. He was still cautious, but he understood the gravity of their mission. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. Evelyn guided John back to her car, and together they began their search for the elusive shelter. John gave directions based on his fragmented memories, leading them through neighborhoods in stark contrast to the luxury Evelyn was accustomed to. The streets grew increasingly deteriorated as they ventured further into the city's underbelly. Evelyn's resolve only hardened with each step. After hours of searching, John finally directed Evelyn to a narrow, dimly lit street. "It's down there," he said, his voice trembling with nervousness. "I think the place is further in, near an abandoned building." Evelyn parked the car discreetly and they got out. The area was eerily quiet, with only a few figures moving through the shadows. John led Evelyn through a narrow alley, cluttered with trash and graffiti, until they reached a dilapidated building with a nearly invisible facade. "This is it," John whispered. "They don't like visitors." Evelyn took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She knew that any misstep could jeopardize their search. She approached the door carefully and knocked 3 times, just as John had instructed. The silence that followed was thick with tension before the door was partially opened by a middle-aged man with a stern, unreadable expression. "What do you want?" he asked brusquely. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 3 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. "I'm looking for someone," Evelyn said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nerves. "A young man who might have come here. His name is Michael. He disappeared years ago." The man scrutinized her for a long moment, his gaze assessing her sincerity. Finally, he opened the door slightly wider. "We don't know anyone by that name here, but if you want, you can ask around. I can't guarantee you'll find what you're looking for." Evelyn nodded, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Thank you," she said, stepping inside with John close behind her. The interior of the building was dim and austere, a stark contrast to the opulence of Evelyn's world. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and neglect. As they entered, Evelyn scanned the room, trying to get a sense of the place. The space was filled with worn-out furniture and the occasional weary figure. She approached a few individuals, asking them if they had seen Michael or knew anything about him. Each inquiry was met with varying degrees of indifference or caution, but Evelyn pressed on, driven by the hope that she might find some trace of her grandson. Hours passed, and Evelyn's efforts seemed to yield little. She began to lose hope, feeling the weight of her exhaustion and the futility of her search. Just as she was about to give up, she spotted a young woman sitting alone in a corner. There was something in her demeanor, an air of sadness and detachment that made Evelyn approach her. "Excuse me," Evelyn said gently. "I'm looking for someone named Michael. He might have come here a few years ago. I know it's a long shot, but if you've heard anything or seen someone like him." The young woman looked up, her eyes reflecting a flicker of recognition. "Michael," she repeated softly. "Yes, I remember him. He was here for a while. He was troubled, but he had a good heart. I don't know where he went, but he mentioned something about wanting to start over, somewhere far from here. He talked about finding a place where he could be himself." Evelyn's heart leaped. "Do you know where he might have gone? Any hint or clue at all?" The young woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, I don't know, but he often spoke about leaving everything behind, starting anew in a place where he could escape his past. If he did leave, he might be somewhere far from the city where no one can find him." Evelyn felt a mixture of relief and despair. They were closer than they had ever been to finding Michael, but the journey ahead was still daunting. "Thank you," Evelyn said sincerely, trying to keep her voice steady. "If you remember anything else, please let me know." The young woman nodded, and Evelyn turned to John, her determination renewed. "We're getting closer, John. We need to keep searching. There's still hope." John nodded, understanding the weight of Evelyn's words. Together they left the shelter, ready to continue their search for Michael, no matter where it might lead them. As Evelyn and John walked through the opulent halls of her mansion, Evelyn's mind raced with the gravity of their situation. The grandeur of her home felt starkly at odds with the grim reality they had just left behind. She led John to a guest room, its luxury a stark contrast to the world he had recently known. The room was well furnished and inviting, a temporary refuge from the harshness of the streets. Once they were settled, Evelyn took a deep breath and began to formulate her plan. She needed to find out more about what Michael had witnessed and who might be after him. The information from the elderly woman at the shelter was unsettling. Michael had seen something that involved powerful people, something that had driven him into hiding out of fear. Evelyn's first step was to use her influence and connections to dig deeper into the shadows of New York's elite circles. She thought about reaching out to her trusted contacts in law enforcement and private investigations, people who had previously assisted her in various capacities. They might be able to shed light on any suspicious activities or threats that could be connected to Michael's disappearance. Before she started making calls, she decided to talk to John. She found him sitting on the edge of the guest bed, still looking out of place in the luxurious surroundings. Evelyn approached him with a mix of concern and determination. "John," she began gently, "I know this isn't easy, and I appreciate everything you've done. But if we're going to find Michael, we need to know as much as possible. Would you remember anything else about what he said or did? Any detail, no matter how small, could be important." John looked up, his expression troubled. "I don't know much more, ma'am. Michael didn't share much with me, but he seemed to be scared of more than just the city or the people in it. He had this look in his eyes like he was running from something that wasn't just physical. I could tell it was something deep, something psychological." Evelyn nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of John's words. "You're right. It's not just about finding him, it's about understanding what drove him to disappear and what he's running from." She decided to make her calls while John rested. She needed to gather information on any possible threats or entities that could have caused Michael to live in fear. After making several calls to her contacts, she arranged for an investigative team to dig into recent high-profile cases or scandals that might align with Michael's fears. The next day, Evelyn received a call from one of her contacts who had been able to dig up some preliminary information. There were rumors of a corruption scandal involving a prominent businessman, linked to some dark and dangerous dealings. The nature of the scandal suggested it might be the type of situation Michael could have stumbled upon, something that would drive him to disappear and live in hiding. Armed with this new lead, Evelyn felt a surge of renewed determination. She needed to investigate further and see if there was a connection between the scandal and Michael's disappearance. She planned to meet with her contact to discuss the details in person, hoping that this new information would bring her closer to finding her grandson. Before leaving, Evelyn checked in on John. "We have a new lead," she said. "I'm going to follow up on it. Stay here and rest. I'll update you as soon as I can." John nodded, his exhaustion evident, but also a flicker of hope in his eyes. Evelyn left the mansion with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that every step taken was crucial in the search for Michael. The road ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but Evelyn was resolved to uncover the truth and bring her grandson home, no matter what obstacles lay in her path. Evelyn began her day with a renewed sense of urgency. She had to keep pushing forward, despite the anxiety gnawing at her. After a quick breakfast, she reviewed the information she had gathered and prepared to meet with her contact, who had provided the lead on the corruption scandal. John was still in the guest room, resting but visibly anxious. Evelyn made sure he had everything he needed and reassured him once again, "Stay here and stay safe. I'll be back as soon as I can with more information." She left the mansion, navigating the busy streets of New York with a singular focus. The city seemed more indifferent than usual, the daily grind continuing as if nothing extraordinary was happening. But for Evelyn, the stakes had never been higher. She arrived at a discreet cafe where her contact, an investigative journalist named Alex, had agreed to meet her. Alex was someone Evelyn trusted for their ability to dig deep into the city's underbelly without attracting too much attention. As Evelyn entered the cafe, she spotted Alex at a secluded table in the corner. Alex, a sharp-eyed individual in their early 40s with an air of quiet determination, greeted her with a nod. They exchanged pleasantries and quickly got down to business. "I appreciate you meeting me on such short notice," Evelyn began, her voice steady despite the anxiety she felt. "No problem," Alex replied, sliding a folder across the table. "I've been digging into the corruption network you mentioned. It's a tangled web, but there's some significant information here." Evelyn opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. There were names of influential figures, connections to various shady businesses, and details about a recent scandal involving illegal activities and money laundering. The names were all tied to powerful individuals who had extensive reach and influence. Michael's name didn't come up directly, Alex explained, but the network has been linked to various high-profile disappearances and threats. It's possible Michael witnessed something that made him a target. We've seen cases like this before, people who know too much about the inner workings of these networks. Evelyn felt a pang of fear mixed with determination. What can we do next? Alex leaned in, their expression serious. "We need to be very careful. These people have eyes and ears everywhere. My suggestion is to focus on finding out more about their recent activities. There's a high-profile event coming up, a charity gala that many of these figures will attend. It could be a chance to gather more information or even spot someone who might know about Michael." Evelyn nodded, feeling a surge of resolve. "If that's the best lead we have, then we need to act on it. I'll need to get an invitation to this event. Can you help with that?" Alex nodded. "I can arrange a way for you to get in. But remember, this is dangerous. We're delving into a world where the stakes are incredibly high." With a plan in place, Evelyn left the cafe with a sense of purpose. She would attend the gala, gather as much information as possible, and hopefully get closer to finding Michael. The risk was great, but her resolve was unwavering. Back at the mansion, Evelyn prepared for the gala. She chose an elegant but understated dress, blending sophistication with discretion. She knew she had to be observant and careful not to draw unnecessary attention. John, still recovering, would remain at the mansion under the watchful eye of her staff. As evening approached, Evelyn made her way to the event. The gala was being held in a luxurious venue, with opulent decorations and a guest list filled with high-profile individuals. Evelyn's heart raced as she stepped into the venue, knowing that every conversation and every interaction could be a crucial piece of the puzzle in her search for Michael. The night was full of whispered conversations and hidden agendas. Evelyn navigated the crowd, her senses alert for any clue that might lead her closer to her grandson. She knew that every moment counted, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. Peter looked down, his fingers nervously tapping on the table. Michael didn't go into specifics, but he said he witnessed something involving a group of powerful individuals. He mentioned a meeting, something big, where these people were making deals that involved illegal activities, corruption, and probably even violence. Evelyn's heart pounded. Did he say anything more about this meeting? Anything that could give us a clue about who these people are or where they might be? Peter shook his head slowly. He was scared, and understandably so. But he did mention a location, a warehouse, or a building that was used for these secret meetings. He didn't know the exact address, but he remembered it was in a rundown part of the city, somewhere near the docks. Evelyn absorbed this information, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. Do you know if he ever planned to go there? Did he have any idea where he might be hiding now? Peter's expression grew more somber. He talked about wanting to get away, to disappear completely. The last time we spoke, he said he was planning to leave New York, but he was scared. He thought they might come after him no matter where he went. Evelyn felt a deep sense of urgency. Peter, do you have any idea if he left any clues behind? Anything that might help us locate this warehouse or where he might have gone next? Peter nodded reluctantly. Michael left behind a notebook. It's filled with his thoughts and sketches. He might have written down something about the location or his plans. I didn't look through it too closely, but it's in a drawer in the corner. Evelyn moved quickly, crossing to the drawer and pulling out the worn notebook. As she flipped through the pages, she found a series of scribbled notes and diagrams. Some pages were filled with frantic writing, while others contained rough sketches of buildings and maps. One page, in particular, caught her eye. It had a rough sketch of a warehouse with some notes scribbled around it, along with an address. "This is it," Evelyn said, her voice firm with determination. "This might be the lead we need." Peter looked up, a glimmer of hope in his tired eyes. "I hope so." "I do." Evelyn nodded and stood up. "Thank you, Peter. This information could be crucial. I need to follow this lead right away. If you think of anything else or if you remember more details, please contact me." Peter nodded, looking relieved that he could contribute to the search. As Evelyn and the detective left the apartment, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The address from Michael's notebook could be the key to finding him and uncovering the truth behind the corruption network he had stumbled into. The drive back to Manhattan was filled with anxious anticipation. Evelyn reviewed the address and the sketches in the notebook, trying to piece together any additional information. The warehouse, as described, was located in a deteriorated part of the city near the docks, a place that could easily hide illicit activities. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 4 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Arriving at the location, Evelyn and the detective found themselves in a grimy, desolate area with few people around. The warehouse stood ominously in the distance, its broken windows and rusting metal giving it a menacing appearance. Evelyn's heart raced as she approached the building, her thoughts focused on finding Michael and uncovering the secrets hidden within those walls. She turned to the detective, who was scanning the area with a concerned look. "We need to be cautious. If Michael's fears are valid, there could be danger inside." The detective nodded, and they both proceeded carefully, their eyes scanning for any signs of activity. As they neared the entrance, Evelyn's thoughts were with Michael, hoping that they would find him safe and that the mystery of his disappearance would finally come to light.
David's expression shifted from surprise to guarded suspicion. He leaned back in his chair, studying Evelyn with a wary look. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, trying to maintain a facade of calm. "Michael's disappearance has nothing to do with me."
Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice steady but fierce. "Don't lie to me, David. Peter, the young man from the shelter, told me everything. Michael saw something he shouldn't have, something involving a lot of money, bribes, and even murder. And now he's gone, and I need to find him." David's face paled slightly, a flicker of guilt crossing his features before he quickly masked it. "You don't understand the situation. Michael was in over his head. He shouldn't have been there. I had no idea he was involved until it was too late." Evelyn's heart pounded as she struggled to keep her composure. "Where is he, David? Do you know where he went?" "Peter said Michael was trying to leave for Canada. Is that true?" David looked away, his silence speaking volumes. Evelyn could see the conflict in his eyes, and she pressed on. "If you have any humanity left in you, you'll help me. Michael could be in danger, and you have the means to find him or at least give me a lead." David sighed deeply, rubbing his temples as if the weight of his secrets was too much to bear. All right. Michael was right. He saw things he shouldn't have. The people involved, let's just say they're not the kind to let loose ends dangle. As for Canada, I don't know if he made it. I do know, though, that he had connections with someone who might help him cross the border. There's a contact, someone he might have reached out to. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Who? Tell me." David hesitated, clearly torn between his safety and the possibility of redemption. "Her name is Lena. She's a fixer, someone who helps people in trouble cross borders. She's not easy to find, but if Michael was in contact with her, she might know where he is now." Evelyn felt a glimmer of hope, but quickly tempered it with caution. "Where can I find Lena?" David looked at her with a mix of resignation and reluctance. "Lena operates out of a small cafe in Queens. It's a front, so you won't find any obvious signs of her work there. Just ask around, and they'll point you in the right direction." With this new lead, Evelyn thanked David curtly and left his mansion. As she drove to Queens, her mind raced with thoughts of Michael and the potential danger he might still be in. She knew that finding Lena could be the key to locating Michael and unraveling the web of corruption that had entangled her family. Arriving in Queens, Evelyn found the cafe David had mentioned. It was a modest establishment, with an old-fashioned charm that belied the secrets it might harbor. She entered, scanning the room for any sign of Lena or people who might be connected to her. The cafe was cozy, filled with the comforting aroma of coffee and pastries. Evelyn approached the counter and, trying to appear casual, asked the barista if Lena was around. The barista, a young woman with a guarded expression, gave her a curt nod and gestured toward a small booth in the back. Evelyn walked over, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she approached, she noticed a woman sitting alone at the booth, her demeanor calm but watchful. This must be Lena. Evelyn took a deep breath and sat down across from her. "Are you Lena?" Evelyn asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman's eyes met hers with a sharp, assessing look. "Depends on who's asking," Lena replied coolly. Evelyn leaned in, her voice low. "I'm looking for someone, my grandson. I was told you might be able to help." Lena's gaze remained steady, and Evelyn could sense that she was calculating her response. "I don't deal in charity, but if you've got something worth trading, I might be able to help you. What's your offer?" Evelyn knew she needed to tread carefully. "I don't have much to offer, but I'm desperate to find him. His life could be at risk. I'm willing to negotiate, but right now I just need information. Anything you can give me about where he might have gone or how to find him." Lena's expression softened slightly, but her eyes remained calculating. "Let's see what you've got. If you're honest and show me you're serious, I might be able to help. Otherwise, you're on your own." Evelyn felt a surge of determination. "I'm serious. Please just tell me what you need, and I'll do my best to provide it." As they began their negotiation, Evelyn's thoughts were solely focused on one thing: finding Michael and ensuring his safety, no matter what it took. The tension in the room was palpable as Michael lay on the bed, recovering from his injuries. Evelyn stayed by his side, her hand still gripping his, offering comfort and reassurance. The ordeal had been grueling, and seeing Michael in such a state only added to the weight of her exhaustion. David, standing by the door, looked as though he was grappling with his demons. He had come through in the end, but the cost was high. Evelyn's gaze was fixed on her grandson, but she couldn't ignore David's presence. "Michael," Evelyn said softly, "we need to get you medical help. You can't stay here like this." Michael nodded weakly, his eyes showing a mixture of relief and fear. I don't know who to trust. They could find me anytime." Evelyn looked at David. "You need to arrange for a safe place where Michael can get proper care, and we need to get him out of here as soon as possible. Can you do that?" David swallowed hard and nodded. "I'll arrange for a secure location. It won't be easy, but I'll make sure he's safe." The detective, who had been silently observing the interaction, stepped forward. "I'll coordinate with David. We need to make sure that wherever Michael goes, it's well protected and that the threat is minimized." Evelyn nodded, trusting both David and the detective to handle the logistics. Her focus remained on Michael. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. "Michael, we're going to get you out of here and make sure you're safe. Just hold on a little longer." As the arrangements were made, Evelyn kept a close watch on her grandson. The hotel owner had been instructed to keep a low profile and not reveal Michael's presence to anyone. With David and the detective's help, they managed to secure a safe house not far from the hotel, equipped with medical supplies and guarded by trusted personnel. Michael was carefully transported to the new location, and Evelyn stayed with him, ensuring he received the medical attention he needed. The staff at the safe house worked quickly to tend to his injuries, and though Michael was still in pain, he began to recover. In the quiet moments between medical checks, Evelyn and Michael spoke softly. She could see the fear and exhaustion in his eyes, but there was also a flicker of hope. "Grandma," Michael said, his voice weak but steady, "I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Evelyn squeezed his hand gently. "It's not your fault, Michael. You were just caught in a terrible situation. We'll figure this out together, and we'll make sure no one else gets hurt." Michael nodded, the tension easing from his shoulders as he began to relax, feeling the safety of the new environment. Meanwhile, David was working tirelessly to address the threats Michael faced. He used his connections to uncover more information about the people chasing his son and to ensure that the safe house remained secure. His actions were driven by a mix of guilt and determination, trying to atone for the mistakes that had led to this dangerous situation. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 5 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. As days passed and Michael's condition improved, Evelyn knew that their fight was far from over. They still needed to uncover the full extent of the corruption Michael had witnessed and ensure that the danger was completely eradicated. But for now, the immediate priority was clear: ensuring Michael's safety and helping him recover. With the support of David and the detective, Evelyn was hopeful that they would be able to navigate the dangers ahead and protect their family from the shadows that had plagued them. The peacefulness of the countryside was a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured, offering Michael a much-needed reprieve from the danger and fear that had dominated his life. Evelyn's small house, surrounded by open fields and nestled far from the city's turmoil, provided a sanctuary where they could regroup and heal. David's efforts to regain Michael's trust were earnest but challenging. He worked hard to make amends, showing through his actions that he was committed to making things right. Michael, while still wary, began to see the sincerity in his father's attempts. Gradually, their strained relationship began to mend, though it would take time to fully repair the damage caused. Evelyn was tireless in her vigilance, ensuring that their new home remained secure. She continued to collaborate with the detective to gather information on the individuals still pursuing Michael. Every lead, every bit of intel, was scrutinized to keep their new sanctuary safe. As Michael's physical wounds healed, so did his emotional scars. The support from Evelyn and the gradual reconciliation with David helped him regain some sense of normalcy. The quiet of the countryside, combined with the love and care of his grandmother and the renewed presence of his father, offered a semblance of peace that he hadn't felt in a long time. Evelyn took solace in the fact that they had managed to protect Michael and provide him with a safe place, but she knew that vigilance and preparation were key. The threat was still present, and the world they were trying to escape from wasn't going to disappear overnight. In their new routine, Evelyn, Michael, and David found moments of solace and unity. They shared stories, made plans for the future, and worked together to rebuild their lives from the ground up. The bonds of family, tested by adversity, grew stronger as they navigated their way forward. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Evelyn faced it with renewed determination. She had weathered the storm and protected her family, and now, with the support of those she loved, she was ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. And there we have it, a harrowing journey filled with courage, determination, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Evelyn's relentless quest to protect her grandson Michael from a dangerous web of corruption has led to a profound story of resilience. David's attempts to mend his fractured relationship with Michael, and the family's struggle to rebuild their lives in the face of adversity, remind us of the importance of trust, courage, and the strength found in unity. We hope you found this story as compelling as we have. What have you learned from Evelyn, Michael, and David's experiences? How can their journey inspire you to overcome your challenges or strengthen your relationships? We'd love to hear from you. Share one thing you've learned from this story and how you plan to apply it in your own life. Leave your comment below this video and let us know. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Thank you for watching.